Is it just me, or have anyone else ever taken a look at some of the men while playing Skyrim and wondered, how on Tamriel are you guys getting so big, huge, and jacked? I mean, look at those arms. They are massive. Some of these guys look like they're ready to set foot on a bodybuilding stage at any moment, but where do these muscles actually come from? Do they just spawn in on a few lucky genetically gifted Chad-like babies, or do they actually have to work for it and earn that body like we do in real life? Or is it just video game nonsense and none of it actually makes any sense at all? Well, to try and understand that question, I have picked out one of the residents of Skyrim and decided to follow him around for the next 24 hours to see how exactly he's getting that juicy, bulbous body he's walking around with. But before we get to the stalking part, and Farcus here sends us a restraining order with the courier, we must first lay down and identify the 3 core pillars to equip ourselves with a body like this. The first pillar being, of course, everyone's favorite New Year's resolution, the workout itself. I know. Shocker. To get this big or build any muscle at all, you actually have to put your body under stress and tension during a workout. However, it's not actually here that we build the muscle. We'll come to that part later. It is actually here that we break our muscles down. During the workout, we need to work hard enough so that the muscle tissue breaks, which is why progressive overloading and training till failure is so important. So, for our first step, we need to check if the NPCs of Skyrim actually train their muscles and train them hard. The next big step on our checklist is equally as important, if not even more so. I mean, you can toil away at your body lifting mammoth tusks and hitting great beauty and split squats all day, but if your nutrition isn't right, then the results will be lackluster. And definitely far from the Chad-like bodies our Nord overlords in Skyrim run around with. So, to make it simple, we need a good, varied diet consisting of some healthy fats, a good chunk of protein, and a lot of carbs to fuel our workouts. The diet changes a lot depending on whether we're bulking or cutting, but to keep it simple, we'll just keep an eye out for what food and how much food Farcus eat during a day. Lastly, we get to probably the most overlooked and underrated step in the process of building muscle: sleep. Preferably 7 to 9 hours of it. I mentioned earlier that it's not actually during our workout that we build the muscle. This stuff actually happens while we're tucked into bed, cuddling our favorite gym bro, cause according to gym bro science, cuddling increases muscle gain. So don't worry, bro. It's not actually gay. It's just for the muscles. Good night. During the night, our body then breaks down all the nutrients we've gotten from our food during the day and uses it to repair and recover our muscle tissues that we've broken down during our workouts. Our body then sees that the muscle tissue isn't strong enough since it's been broken, so we must build it back together, but this time bigger and stronger than ever before. And voila! Just like that, you're now 6'7", 350 pounds lean, ready to grab Serana under your arm and save the world from some doom and gloom dragon.
There's one they fear. In their tongue, he's Dovahkiin, Dragonborn.
Fus Road double front bicep. Obviously, all of this is slightly simplifying some aspects and skipping over some other stuff, but I mean, this is Skyrim. I doubt these guys are actually taking a horse carriage to their nearest Planet Fitness, hitting PRs on the reg, snorting vampire dust for pre-workout, and grinding Draugr bones into creatine. I just want to see if there's actually any indication on whether these guys are working out, eating right, and getting their sleep in order to have the bodies that they run around with. So, in order to do just that, I have chosen some random inhabitants of Skyrim and followed them around for 24 hours in order to see if they adhere to our established rules on how to get jacked. Slight interception here. This is a cough from the future. So, I decided to follow around and record a bunch of different NPCs, but it turns out that stalking and following one NPC is actually quite a lot of content. So, in order to avoid this video being like an hour long, I've decided to just focus on Farcus here. But if you want to actually see me stalk and analyze more people of Skyrim, let me know, and I'll probably make it happen. So, yeah. Anyway, back to whatever this nerd is talking to you about. I mean, look at this guy. He's wearing a tank top pretending to be big. What the fuck is going on here? I'm so big. Let me tell you about big people in Skyrim. You probably can't even hear me because my microphone went away, but yeah. back to this nerd. So, the person I've chosen to follow around for the next 24 hours is Farcus. The reason I've chosen to follow around Farcus for the next 24 hours is because he's a gym bro of few words and mostly action. And he likes to train.
Thinking I need to train some more. Getting tired of hanging around talking all day.
At least according to his own few words. He also happens to be pretty jacked, and he's kind of dressed like a guy who might actually get up to some exciting stuff in his daily routine. But before we get any further, we need to know what we're actually working with, which means, Farcus, could you undress for us? Please. Okay, so what are we actually looking at here? I mean, to the untrained eye, this might just look like a big, buff, naked guy, which yeah, it is. But this actually tells us a lot about what we're looking for in his workout routine and his diet. So if we start at the top and slowly work our way down, yeah, oh boy. We can then see and conclude that this guy is indeed pretty jacked. He has some well-developed traps and some big bulging delts. He also has some very big biceps and a pair of meaty forearms. And if we take a quick peek behind, we can also see he has some sizable triceps as well. Included in all of that is some pretty visible veins running from his shoulders all the way down to his biceps and all the way down to his forearms as well. Just from this alone, we can conclude that this guy definitely has a Planet Fitness subscription and most likely takes a supplement or two on the side. I mean, to have this clear separation between his shoulders and his biceps, as well as his biceps and his forearms, and veins that are this visible, I'd assume this person to have a pretty low body fat percentage, which comes from a pretty strict diet. I mean, you don't just wake up one day with arms like these. These are the product of some serious commitment and discipline over a long period of time. So honestly, I'm very excited to see if this is reflected in his workouts and his diet later on. However, if we take a look at his midsection here, it kind of tells us a different story. Compared to his incredible arms, his chest is a bit lacking. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad chest, I'm just saying that compared to how big and lean his arms are, his chest is a bit smaller. This is actually pretty interesting, as early bodybuilding didn't really care much about the chest at all. All that was really desired back then was big arms, strength, and natural health. It isn't until much later, past World War II, that the bench press becomes popular. So historically, it actually kind of makes sense for his chest to be on the smaller side, because you don't really naturally get those muscles under tension. And, well, it's Skyrim. They don't actually have all the equipment needed for these kinds of workouts. And I also can't really help but wonder if this is a cool and intentional detail from Bethesda, or if it just happens to align right. Knowing Bethesda, it's probably the latter. Anyway, if we take a look at his stomach, we can maybe kinda see the outline of some abs, but it's tucked away under a healthy layer of fat. His back, however, is looking massive. I mean, you can even see his lats, or his wings, if you will, poking out both from behind and in the front. Overall, this gives a bit of a contradicting picture on his body fat percentage. His arms are telling me a low double digits, like 12, maybe even all the way down to 10%. But his stomach, his chest, and his back is telling me more like a healthy 20 to 25-ish%. While the proportions on this guy does seem a bit wild, it isn't actually unheard of. Men usually tend to store a lot of fat in their abdomen, and for guys, that's usually the last place fat tends to cling on to. But at the end of the day, it's all down to genetics and individual body structure. And please, do me a favor and never listen to anyone telling you to target fat loss in specific areas. That isn't a thing. I mean, you can eat less and you can do more cardio and your body will lose fat on its own, but you can't target fat loss in specific areas. That's a scam. Anyway, last thing we need to take a look at is his legs. And Farcus, you've been skipping leg day. And so have you. I mean, your biceps are bigger than your quads. I don't even know how that is possible. But yeah, I don't know. There's not really too much to say about his legs. They are pretty standard. This is actually pretty similar to the situation with his chest. If you don't go to the gym to specifically hit legs, you just really run and walk around, which is good for cardio, but is not great for getting fat tree logs for legs. So Bethesda, you kind of get another point for realism here, whether it's intentional or not. So to quickly summarize, we're looking for anything that indicates that he's he's training his upper body, specifically his shoulders, arms, and back. And for a diet that reflects his body fat percentage, which we'll guesstimate to be around 22%. We start the day with Farcus at around 9 a.m. He has done his morning routine and he is ready to take on the day. He's clearly had a rough night's sleep and hasn't quite recovered yet, so he starts out the day by chilling and walking around the backyard of Jorvaskr for around 20 minutes or so, before sitting down and drinking out of a cup. Now, this is really exciting. This is the first time he's actually consuming anything, so this means nutrients or at least hydration. However, I can't actually see what's inside the cup he's drinking, so I kind of have to look around and make the environment do the storytelling here. And right next to him is a bottle of wine. It's safe to assume that he's starting out the day by drinking an alcoholic beverage at like 9:20 a.m. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but alcohol is not generally great for your body nor upholding your physique. However, a standard tankard holds about 500 milliliters, and 500 milliliters of wine is about 400 calories. But that then begs the question, how many calories do our boy Farcus actually need in a day? Well, in order to answer that question, we first have to figure out how tall Farcus is and how much he weighs. Luckily, there is a way to find out his exact height. Now, bear with me here, we're about to get a little bit nerdy. Every person in Skyrim is assigned a scale value. The standard scale value for a person is set to 1.0, which then translates into 128 game units. You see, everything in Skyrim is measured in game units. The wiki for the creation engine, which is the engine Skyrim is made in, states that 128 game units is equal to 1.828 meters. And if you want that in freedom units, it is 6 feet. Or, well, that's what the wiki says if you use the Wayback Machine to find out, because it's apparently been down for maintenance for the past year now. It just works. Now, every race has a modifier that increases or decreases their height correspondingly. Farcus here descends from the Norse of Skyrim, whose height modifier is set at 1.03, which means if we want to know the height of Farcus here, or every male Nord in the entirety of Skyrim, we just multiply the standard height of 1.83 or 6 feet with 1.03, which gives us a height of 1.883 meters or 6'2". Unfortunately, I could not find a similar way to calculate the weight of this guy, but I mean, he's a big guy. At 6'2", I'd imagine he weighs like 90 to 95 kilos, or like 200, 210 pounds. There are most certainly some bigger nerds out there than me who know some forbidden jutsu knowledge that I'm unaware of. So if you do know, please let me know it down in the comments and tell me how you figured it out. All of this is really to find out how many calories this big boy needs in a day in order to maintain his current physique. With his height at 6'2" and his weight set to 205 pounds, and together with him being a big muscly boy, since muscles burn more calories than fat, I'll set his daily caloric intake to be about 3,000 calories a day for maintenance. So that tankard of wine he just had for breakfast, that's about 15% of our daily caloric intake. It doesn't really provide us with any nutrients though, as alcohol itself is kind of the fourth macronutrient since it contains calories, but it doesn't really provide us with anything useful besides a good time and a deadly hangover. He then proceeds to spend the entire morning outside of Jorvaskr, stumbling around half drunk, doing fuck all until he decides to have his next drink by 11:35 a.m. And would you believe it? It's another glass of wine. That puts our total caloric intake at around 800 so far, consisting of only wine. By 12 p.m. it starts raining outside, and Farcus here gets the bright idea of going inside to stay dry and hopefully eat some food, maybe even stay active a little bit. Like, I don't know, get into a brawl or do some push-ups, maybe spar with his fellow companions. I mean, so far the only form of exercise he's had all day is in the form of walking, and trust me, I've been looking. So far, in the span of 3 hours, he's taken exactly 193 steps. It's not looking great, but it's still only 12 p.m, so there's still lots of time for exercise and activities. When heading inside the hall, I kind of lost him for a bit and panicked, but it turns out he's right next to the old housekeeper, having a little chat. Or, well, none of them is actually saying or doing anything, but I'd like to imagine they're having a nice bonding moment together. He then spends the next hour walking around a bit before deciding to have another drink, and you guessed it, Wine's on the menu, boys. Make it another 400 calories of wine. I'd like to point out that we're up to 1 p.m. now, and he's had 1.5 liters of wine. Do Americans measure that in ounces? Is that a thing? If so, it's almost 51 ounces of wine, according to Google. I would also like to point out that he spends the next 3 hours from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. just slamming wine. I never see him actually refilling his cup or anything, so I still count it as just 1 cup of wine. Maybe he just really enjoys the scent of wine like a true connoisseur, a part of the bourgeoisie. He then proceeds to get up, move 11 steps, sit down, and have his first meal of the day. Now this is where I get all giddy and excited again, because this is nutrients, this is sustenance, and we haven't eaten anything yet, we haven't worked out yet, so this has got to be a good filling meal to fuel our workouts later in the day. So at first I figured since he pulled out a loaf of bread, that's what he's eating. But in all my time spying on all these people, I have never seen anyone eat anything but bread. So I'd like to imagine that while bread is probably the only thing they're animated to eat, they are eating a bit more varied. So if we take a look next to Farcus and let the environment do the storytelling once again, we can see that next to him is a plate of honey nut treats and cream boiled treats. So I'd like to imagine that that's what he's actually eating instead. I mean, he has a bit of a buzz going from the 1.5 liters of wine he's been consuming, and he's getting a bit snackish. Why not chow down on some treats? Only problem is, at this point, it's 4 p.m. in the day, and all he's done is walk around a bit and consume alcohol, and his first meal of the day is a snack. Or at least that's what I thought. It turns out that this platter right here, it contains quite a bit more calories than I would consider just a snack. But how do we even begin to track the calories that's in these things? I mean, the game doesn't give us any information. Well, the only thing I could think of was going to the official Skyrim cookbook and actually take a look at what's inside these foods. The only problem is that it doesn't actually tell me the exact calories on any of the things in the cookbook, but luckily it tells us the ingredients, which lets us just look up all the macros in those things and calculate it for ourselves. So that's what I did. Quick side note, again, all of these recipes are unfortunately for me measured in freedom units, so if I've made any mistakes from miscalculations, that's on me, but it should be pretty damn accurate, at least accurate enough for this video. Next to him is a platter of 3 skewers of honey nut treats and 4 boiled cream treats. So let's start with the honey nut treats. The cookbook has the ingredients down to make exactly 3 skewers. How the fuck do you say that? Skewers, which lets me just look at the amount of ingredients, get an estimate of the macros in those individual ingredients, add them together for a total caloric number for each ingredient, and lastly add them all together for a grand total, which in this case for the honey nut treat comes down to a total of 345 grams of carbs, 20 grams of fiber, 53 grams of protein, and 80 grams of fat, equaling a whopping 2,352 calories. That's a lot of calories for a snack, and we haven't even made it to the 4 cream boiled treats yet. The boiled cream treats consist of the treat itself and a custard sauce on top, which means we need the nutritional values for both the sauce and the treat. On top of that, the recipe is for 10 treats, and we only have 4 on the platter next to Farcus, so we need to calculate that into our final caloric amount. But the total macros and calories for the 4 treats comes down to 217 grams of carbs, 6 grams of fiber, 33 grams of protein, and 32 grams of fat, for a total caloric value of 1,300. That means his entire meal consists of a total of 3,652 calories. On top of the 3 cups of wine we've already had before this, puts us at a grand total of 4,852 calories, with the only exercise being the 254 steps we've taken so far. And maybe the calories burned moving his hand from the table to his mouth to fill his fat ass. It's pretty safe to say it's not looking great for a boy Farcus so far. If this is actually his everyday life, he should look more like a person on a TLC show called My 1,000 Pound Life rather than a stage-ready bodybuilder. But the day isn't over yet, so we continue to have hope. About an hour and 15 minutes later, he decides his tummy starts rumbling and he sits down to chow down on another snack. In front of him is a single honey nut treat, which makes it fairly easy for me, so add another 784 calories to the counter. At this point, it is 6 p.m. in the evening, and his previous buzz from all the alcohol is starting to wear off from all the snacks he's eating, so he he decides to sit down and have another cup of wine, baby. While all of this is going on, I decided to have a look around the place. And there is actually signs of good food around here. We got potatoes, which is a good source of filling carbs. We got salmon and slaughterfish, and while I don't know exactly what's in slaughterfish, I imagine it's like most other fish, which is rich on protein and healthy fats. We got fruits and vegetables like carrots, apples, and tomatoes. We even got a massive chunk of venison, and even though it's raw, I imagine it's pretty good when cooked over the fire and a great source of protein. But one crucial thing is missing here: water. Have you ever noticed that? There ain't nobody in Skyrim drinking water. I know there's milk, which is a great way to quench your thirst and get some protein in. But in Skyrim, being a milk drinker is an insult. I don't know who started this slander and propaganda, but being a milk drinker is cool as fuck, alright? It is at least a lot cooler than being a raging alcoholic. While looking around in the main hall alone, I found 4 tapped caskets, 19 bottles of ale, and 10 bottles of wine. That's a lot of alcohol. Is the water from the streams undrinkable? Is Skyrim like some sort of conspiracy is going on here? Anyway, when Farcus is done with his 4th tankard of wine for the day, it's starting to show that he's craving something a little bit different and decides to go sit down next to a bottle of Nordic ale and decides to fill that tankard right up. Nordic ale is a strong beer, less refined than something like Blackbriar mead or Hunting Brew mead. That means it probably has a higher calorie count due to the higher alcohol percentage and also due to less fermented sugar, which brings the carbs up. So let's put a cup of Nordic ale at around 350 calories for a 500 milliliter tankard. He then gets up, moves to another chair, which exhausts him beyond belief, so he decides to pop open another bottle of ale. I don't know what sort of things Farcus has seen in battle, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. But he decides that in order to be able to sleep tonight, he will have another bottle of beer. It is now 8:25 p.m. and his tummy is starting to rumble for a third and final meal of the day, which is, drum roll please, ta-da! An apple pie. We follow the same procedure as last time and take a look at our trusty cookbook, and according to all the ingredients in the cookbook, it adds up to a whopping 3,319 calories. After consuming an entire day's worth of calories in the form of an apple pie, he of course feels a bit parched, so he decides to get up, take 2 steps, sits down, and pops open another bottle of Nord ale. While following Farcus around, I notice another one of the companions talk about how sobriety is overrated.
Oh, my good friend. Would you do me a kindness? I seem to be down to my last drop of spirits. Let me tell you, sobriety is entirely overrated.
At this point, I'm starting to think they're all just a bunch of alcoholics. Like, this might just be an AA meeting in disguise. The anti-water and anti-milk propaganda has just spread itself too wide in the lands of Skyrim. Unfortunately, Farcus seems to take his companion's advice to heart and decides to open up another bottle of beer and chug it down the hatch. It is now 10 p.m. and Farcus feels like the alcohol is starting to hit him a bit hard, so he starts to waddling his way down to his bedroom. This is the longest distance he's made in one go all day, and he's so drunk it takes him 30 minutes to stumble his way down to his bed, which finally puts him in bed at around 10:30 p.m. He sleeps soundly, even with me parading around his room, rummaging around his things, which I would fucking hope with the amount of alcohol in his body. I'm honestly surprised he managed to wake up from his sleep at all. You know all those memes that men can't decorate and it's just a white room with like a TV and a bed? Farcus kind of lives up to that meme, except it's a bed and a bunch of kegs and beer bottles. He has 5 fucking kegs tapped and ready to go in his own room, assumingly full of alcohol. He also has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 bottles of ale prancing around as decoration in his room, together with 7 bottles of wine. The only food he has laying around is 3 skewers of honey nut treats, which lets us know this is definitely Farcus's room, because we know he likes those. This man lives and eats the way I was dreaming of doing as an adult when I was like 7 years old. Except he also has the debuff of being a raging alcoholic. He then wakes up and gets ready to drink himself into an early grave again at 6:10 a.m. in the morning, which means he got 7 hours and 40 minutes of sleep, which, hey, at least that's pretty good. I don't know what I expected, but this wasn't it. Out of our 3 core pillars being workout, nutrition, and sleep, he managed to get one of them right. And it's probably only because he was so drunk he could sleep through anything. He got almost 8 hours of solid sleep, which is great, but everything else falls apart completely besides that. I honestly expected him to be doing some training at the dummies outside, or maybe get into a brawl inside of the Jorvasker Hall, but mostly he just spent his time walking from one chair to another to find a place to drown his sorrows in more alcohol. His final step count ended up at 694 steps throughout the entire day, amounting to like maybe 30 calories burned, versus his final caloric intake, which ended up at a whopping 10,321 calories. That's exceeding our limit of 3,000 by quite a bit. Maybe he's in a heavy bulking phase right now. Maybe I just caught him on a cheat day and a rest day combined. But it is safe to say that if Farcus lives like this every day, then no, he would not have a body like this while living in Skyrim. Unless maybe there's one variable we've been missing this entire time. See, our boy Farcus here suffers from, or in this context, maybe rather is gifted with, lycanthropy. I mean, Skyrim is a wild place, and I don't really know how the metabolism of a freaking werewolf works. Maybe he's immune to the downsides of alcohol when it comes to building muscle. Maybe he really does need to eat 3 times as much food as an average person. Maybe the strength, stamina, and free entrance fees to the local furry convention acts as some sort of performance-enhancing drug, meaning he just gains size doing fuck all except the occasional mission or two. I don't really know. These variables is a bit out of my zone of expertise. But I can tell you that if you were to live like Farcus and follow his daily routine without at least also being a werewolf, then no, you would not have a body like this. I'm Koff. It was a pleasure, and thank you for watching.